Hey everybody. Um, I'm glad to see got some people here. Hope you're all doing well and that everything's going smoothly for everybody out there. Um, just to let me just check one thing real quick before I dive in. So first, just to give a heads up about what this talk is, as well as kind of I guess workshop you could call it. This is I'm going to be going into the a little bit of the history of rotoscoping and like what that means exactly. Like it's not something that a lot of people are familiar with, and then I'm just going to talk a little bit about some films you could go see that potentially might spark some more interest in rotoscoping, or you can just kind of see what it looks like in something that's actually out there. Um, and then I'm going to dive into using Photoshop to create your rotoscopes. So just a heads up, just be aware that I'm not going to get into the basics of Photoshop, but I'm going to show you the fundamentals to start making your rotoscoped animations. So if you need like a tutorial on how to use Photoshop, this is not what this is going to be. This is more to cover once you've understood a little bit of how to use Photoshop to then start creating rotoscope animations. But if you guys want in the future, I can go ahead and do a tutorial or a workshop on using Photoshop, getting introduced to it, and then also ways that you can use it in your artist practice. So to get started, let's see. Let me just see if I'm on the right tab. Okay. So my name is Samuel Lopez de Victoria. Sorry, late introduction. Um, and Let's look at what rotoscoping is. So rotoscoping is actually a very old technique used in the early stages of when animation started becoming a thing, like when it was actually considered a medium or starting to shape into one. Rotoscoping, both the technique and the patent for a machine to do rotoscoping was created by a man named Max Fleischer. I might be butchering the name, so sorry. So he put a patent in for this device that basically had glass up at like where you're drawing, and it was what do you call it? A frosted glass. And what he would do, he would have this an image from a film projected onto the back of that frosted glass. And then what he could do is with his animation frames, he would trace what he filmed. And the benefit of this technique, which is called rotoscoping, is that you get a lot more lifelike movement with your animation. Back then, they were trying to find more techniques to ease and like make animation more doable, and since the techniques weren't really solidified for back then. Um, if you want to see some of his work, you can look up an animation called Coco the Clown. It's for like a Betty Boop cartoon. I think it's on YouTube. You can look up some other videos on the history of rotoscoping that showcase the rest of his work. But if you're interested, check that out. Look up his name if you want to look up the history of rotoscoping. Then kind of jumping into that's the basic gist of rotoscoping. But if you want to see a film with rotoscoping, there's a lot out there. A lot of them are older films. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you can see the animator Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, where most of the film or the animated film was created using rotoscoping. So all the characters were actually filmed ahead of time. They had actors, and then they drew over all the frames and created everything. You also can see his other film, Ralph Bakshi's American Pop, It's basically the history of music in America through different generations all the way up to I think the 80s. It's kind of a fun film, especially if you're into like music history. Then there's Waking Life, which is kind of more of a philosophical film where they did some experimental animations with rotoscoping, where they brought in a bunch of different artists to do different sections of the film. So that's interesting. There's Chico and Rita, which is a love story set in Cuba. It's really nicely rotoscoped as well. There's a Scanner Darkly, which has Keanu Reeves and a couple other actors that are well known. It's done by the same studio that did Awakening Life. So that also has a very interesting look using rotoscoping. There's a little more recent one called The Case of Hana and Alice. It's about two high school girls in Japan that get into some interesting stuff, and their friendship starts in an interesting way. It's really nicely animated. Again, it's rotoscoped. It's from film. There's also probably the even more recent Amazon series called Undone, where the entire I wouldn't say TV series, but online show is rotoscoped. So they do some interesting stuff with some of the scenes in there. And then also, not necessarily a film, but there is a visual artist known as Shishi Yamazaki. She does watercolor rotoscoping, where every frame she actually watercolors manually by hand. She's done some like ads for Coco Chanel and has some pieces in galleries. A lot of it, if you want to just watch people dance and have fun, she also has a lot of videos that are primarily that. So check it out. Her stuff's pretty cool. Kind of, those are some resources on rotoscoping. You can dive into it further from there, but let's actually jump into Photoshop. Let me switch here. Just give me a second. While I'm switching over, you can, let me see. So the version of Photoshop that I'm going to be using here is Adobe Photoshop CC, so the Creative Cloud. So if you have like the most recent Photoshop, you should be okay. If you don't have the most recent Photoshop, then I think you should still be okay. It's just that some of the terminology and wording that they have to do this might be different, or it might be updated by the time this video is out. So just keep that in mind. Let me pull this up real quick. I'm actually going to jump back to this. Give me 1 second. And let me switch it to, I think, let's do Photoshop. So let's see. So I'm just going to create, you're not seeing it here, but you will in a second. You can create your document at any size that you want. I'm going to do mine just to keep it simple, 512 by 512. I know you don't see that right now. And I'm going to do a resolution of 300. Really, it doesn't entirely matter, especially if you're like exporting it as an animated GIF or something. But it's always good to start higher resolution and come down, because if you start at a low resolution and you go on up, then you're going to start seeing those pixels in your image. So usually 300 is a nice place to start at. So I'm just going to create it. Let's see. Okay, cool. It popped up. Let me hide something. So when you first start Photoshop, it's going to roughly look a bit like this. Let me pull this down because it's bothering me a little bit. It's going to look like your Photoshop program that, you have your layers here on the right. Oh, I'm actually hiding the mouse. Hold on 1 second. You're going to need to see my mouse. Oh, I am terribly sorry. Okay. All right, good. I just wanted to make sure you guys can see my mouse. When you start Photoshop, it's going to look very much, this is Photoshop. You got your layers on the lower right. You got all your tools on the left, and then you have your menu up here at the top. just to like make adjustments to your tool that you're using. But it doesn't look like something you can actually animate in, which most people don't really need to use Photoshop for animation. But surprisingly, Photoshop actually has had for many years an animation section built into it. So it's a little tucked away. There's a couple ways of getting to it. I'm going to show you the easiest way, and then I'm going to show you quickly a different way that you can just pull up the window no matter what like space you're working in Photoshop. So at the very top, you're going to want to go to Window, and you're going to want to go to the Workspace options. So it should be like second from the top. Oh, why is it not showing that? Yeah, that's a little bit rough. Hold on. Let's see. I'm going to give me 1 second. I think this will be a bit better because I think you guys can then see my drop down. Okay, cool. All right. Let me just hide this and hide this. And then I think we're okay. Sorry about that. Minor technical. So, so like I was saying, oh, is it still hiding the cursor? There you go. I'm sorry about that. So what you want to do is go to Window at the very top, and you want to click Window. Hold on. You want to go to Window, go to Workspace, and then you want to choose the one called Motion. They might have a different one, different naming. Instead of motion, it might be say animation or film. If it's one of those, it'll probably be fine to work with that. So you can click that. It's going to look mostly the same, but you're going to get this new window at the bottom is called your timeline. If for some reason you don't want to do it that way, you can actually go to Window and just go all the way down this long list and go to the one that says Timeline, and that'll just pop up the same thing that I just had open before. So if for some reason you lose it, just know you can find it under Window and look in and click on Timeline. So you're going to get this box at the bottom, and it's going to say Create Video Timeline. What you can do is you can go ahead and click that. There's a little arrow to the right that also says Create Frame Animation. You probably, especially if you're going to be rotoscoping, you don't want to click that because it just basically means it's going to use Photoshop's old method of doing animations, which is literally making a new layer every time you have a frame of animation, which can be very time consuming, kind of a mess as well, and just takes, in my opinion, a bit longer. If you enjoy working that way, I think stick with that, but I'm going to be focusing on making a video timeline. So I'm going to create a video timeline. I just click that button, and then you get this nice little like purple bar. What that bar is actually the layer that I have over here on the side that you see. What this is just a regular video layer. So there's nothing super special about it. There's something called keyframes, which I can go into in like a future workshop, just to make some quick and easy animations. But for here, we're focusing on doing frame by frame animations since we actually need to draw each frame individually. So you really don't want to use the regular layer, which is this purple layer here. Might come off a little bit different colored in the stream, but it's like purple-ish. What you want to do is actually make this other layer that is called a video layer. And the way you do that is you go up to layer up here, so on your top menu. You then go to video layers, which is kind of in the middle here. And what you want to do is choose this one that says new blank video layer. So you'll click on that, and it's going to make this new layer that you have. You'll see also like where you normally look for your layers, it's going to show up there as well. And I'll have a little icon that has a picture of like a film strip. That's how you know it's a video layer. The other way to know that's a video layer is, remember what I said, like that first layer, a regular old-fashioned Photoshop layer is purple. That's how you know it's a regular layer. But if it's blue or blue-ish, that's how you know it's a video layer. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to get rid of my video layer. So just clicking the not the video layer, the regular layer. I'm sorry about that. Clicking the regular layer, I'm just hitting the trash can in the layers panel just to get rid of it. I don't need it because it's not going to actually help me with my animation. So now I have my nice little blank video layer by itself. To show you then how this video layer actually works, what you want to do is I'm just going to draw like a, whatever this is. I have my little blob here. Whee! My little sideways blob. Then if you notice, I have controls here to like play. This button on the right is to move one frame forward. So if I have like a bunch of frames, I can just go one frame by frame, so I don't have to like move this, what they call the little scrubber here, to like choose your spot on the timeline. If I go forward one frame, then I have a new blank frame. And so let me see. So then if I kind of roughly draw the same thing, or it's going to be really bad, then I go to the next frame, then I can kind of do this. And I can keep going, blur. So first thing you're going to notice probably with this, so like let me do one thing. If I hit play when I do this, it's just like shows that short little bit, and then like it plays the whole animation. What I can do is actually I can change the time on my video layer. So if it's too long, I can like hover over one of the edges here of the layer in the timeline, and I can click and drag it to make it shorter. So I can drag it over to like it's like 20 frames here. So it's a lot shorter, so I don't have this long thing to play. So when I hit play, then it just plays that whole thing. You can also, if you only want to play a like certain section of your animation, they have this little thing right under the scrubber here that like you can adjust by grabbing the edges, and whenever you hit play, it'll only play what's in that space. So if I move this over to where only where I drew, so let's see, so it disappears there. I'm gonna kind of make it smaller, and then I just hit play. It only plays in that space. If you're noticing, it's a little bit, it actually looks the same on the stream. It's a really wobbly animation. It's not really in line with the entirety of the frame, or the object, I should say. So like it's pretty messy, and it's not like I had to guess where I'm drawing it, and I didn't really know like where my object was, so it's just kind of jumping all over the place. There's a really nice tool in Photoshop called onion skinning, where it allows you to see your previous frame and your next upcoming frame of animation. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to clear each of these frames. Let's see. So I'm going to just delete these. I just selected the whole frame here. Let's see. So I'm going to redraw this, and then I'm going to show you how to turn on onion skinning. So I'm just going to draw whatever this thing here. I don't know what that is. And then I'm going to go to the next frame, and you'll see like, I got my blank frame. But using onion skins, what I can do is then see that previous frame. So if I go, there's this little thing, it's got like 3 or 4 lines. If you click that, it's on the timeline. It gives you all these really good options that you can work with. I'm going to show you some more things you can do with this once we bring in video to start rotoscoping. But what you want to do is you want to click the option that says Enable Onion Skins. So click that, and I get a little like transparent picture of my previous frame. So that's not actually on my current frame, but I can see what my previous frame was actually, what it actually was. So this makes it really easy to draw. So like if I want to kind of follow that line before, and just kind of draw it again, then I can go to the next frame, and then I can kind of reference that again. So this is really good for like if you're doing a walk cycle for your character, or if you just need to see like the the position of things and keeping it very consistent. The onion skin is going to save you a ton of time, as well as headaches. So I'm just doing a very basic thing right now. You know, nothing really fancy. Just doing my weird little blob dude. Boop. So let me just do this frame. It's kind of changing into something else, I'm realizing, but that's okay. It's still going to be a little bit more consistent of animation. So I'm going to move this as the work area, which will only play the frames that I drew in. One thing I forgot to mention, if you want to like hit play and just have it loop forever, you can hit this little gearbox here, and there's a little check here that says loop playback. So right next to the little speaker icon, you can actually click that gear and click loop playback, have it checked or unchecked. I think I had it checked before, so it was automatically looping for me. So if I hit play, if you notice, it's a lot more consistent than before, which is pretty nice. So my animation kind of is not as jittery or jumpy as before, where I was guessing. It's like I was able to see those previous frames, which is pretty nice. Let me see. So if you want to if you're just doing a traditional animation without the rotoscoping, I think this is a really good skill or setting to use, the onion skinning. But if you're doing rotoscoping, you probably won't need it because you have the film to reference to start rotoscoping. So I don't think it's going to be super applicable here, but it's something that you want to know about, and I think is really helpful for anybody like going to be doing animation in some way. Going from that, now let's actually do, since we understand like the timeline a little bit and how to work with that, let's actually start doing rotoscoping and look at the ways that we can work with it in Photoshop. Like do the same methods that the Max guy, I forgot his last name, how he did it, but we're doing the same thing then in Photoshop. So what we're going to actually do, so I'm going to make a new layer, a new video layer, I should say. So I'm going to go down to layer, video layer, and then new blank video layer. I'm going to get rid of this little squiggly dude. Then what I'm going to do, so I just want that blank layer for now. I'm going to go back to layer to get my video in here. I'm going to go to layer. Then I'm going to go to video layers. And then you want to choose the top option where it says new video layer from file. So click that. And what you're going to want to do is probably have a video file ready. I downloaded a couple ones. There is a website that you can get some that I actually grabbed off of here. Let me just show you guys real quick. Let me just switch my. Actually, I'll just bring this over. So there's a website called Pixabay. They have a lot of free stock footage that you can download. It's not crazy big files, and they're all HDs. You can look up what you need. There are some paid ones, but if you just need something to work with and practice, Pixabay, Pixabay.com. It's pretty good. It's royalty free, and like you don't have to worry about anything with the free stuff. So it's a nice resource to work with. I recommend it. Okay, so I have a downloaded video. I'm gonna get this one I have of a dude on the street. So I'm gonna load it in. It's gonna take a little bit just because this is not my most powerful computer. This is a nice little laptop. So just get your video. You don't want it to be super gargantuan in size. Again, since you're only getting using it for reference, not necessarily like you're not going to show, excuse me, sorry, had a lot of soda, so I'm like pretty burpy right now. You want to, you're just going to be using it to then create your hand-drawn parts of the animation. You can do your rotoscoping with still having your video in it as well, so that might just be a style thing. But just keep in mind, just don't get a crazy huge file. You always can use something tiny. You just need to see enough details in your video in order to start drawing on it, because you're just mostly getting shape and color or form. Let's see, still loading. Let's just give it a bit. Yeah, come on, it's taking its sweet time. One thing to keep in mind too while this is loading, if you need static images, if you need like a static image in your file, like if you needed a, I can actually demonstrate it here. If I wanted to have like put a tree here that I'm never going to animate, but I just need it to be in the space, which is like good for backgrounds, I can just make a new regular layer, nothing fancy, and then I can I can just draw. So like I have like my happy little bush here. It's really badly done. And if I hit play here with my video, since I drew on a regular layer, not a video layer, it'll just stay static the entire time. So using regular layers as like backgrounds is a good way of having like static images if you need a background for your stuff. So that's just something to keep in mind that I think would be useful. But let me get rid of this for now. I'm going to move this video a little bit more centered to where he is. I also don't need this entire thing. I'm just going to grab the parts where he's like kind of spinning here. What I can do is I actually can use clip rather than like resize the time like I showed before, you actually can slice it into different layers. And the way you do that is, or sections I should say, you get to the point where you want to cut it. So I'm going to cut it right here. There's a little scissor icon on the left. You can click that. And what I'll do is I'll just splice it into two separate layers that wherever you had your little scrubby time thing. And what I'm going to do is I don't need that first part, so I'm just going to click it and delete it. I'm going to move this over here to kind of slide it to the beginning. I think let's stop it right there. And I'm going to cut it again. Just use the little scissor thing, delete that. So now I have a nice little like short clip here. So if I play that, it's just going to be kind of that animation. So if you're noticing, it's I have a little bit of blur there, but something that you want to keep in mind, especially with rotoscoping, is your frames per second. So what that means is if you have a video that's at 60 frames per second, every second you have, you will have to draw 60 separate images for your rotoscoping. So it'll be very smooth animation that you're creating if you're doing it at 60 frames per second, but it's also going to take you a lot of time because 2 seconds will be 120 images that you need to draw. So there's a way you can actually circumvent that. You can lower the frames per second in your timeline. And so instead of doing 120 per second, we could bring that all the way down to like 12 frames per second. It's going to be a little more choppy, but the animation won't look unnatural. It'll just kind of have a more interesting aesthetic look to it. So what we can do is we can change that by going to the little the menu options here in the upper right of the timeline, that little like 3 or 4 lines. And what you want to do is choose the option that says set timeline frame rate. So if I click that, they have little presets on the left of this box that you can put. You can also type in whatever number you want. Usually it's good to go with the presets because there's reasons behind it. So like 30 is kind of a standard, 60 is like what I was talking about. 23.976 is kind of like the film standard. So if you want to make a more movie-ish look, that might be a good frame rate to go for. I tend to do for rotoscoping like the 12 frames per second. Usually the 23 and below is pretty workable, but I'm just going to do the 12 frames per second, hit OK. If you notice, my timeline's a little bit smaller now. And when I play it, it's a little more choppy, but that's because there's less frames in it now. Now I have those 12 frames per second, but it's still going to look good when I actually animate it. If you need to zoom in on your timeline, if it's like getting a little too tiny for you, on the bottom here, there's these 2 little mountains that you see, like a small mountain and a big mountain. It's really hard to see, but it's down here. you can get the little slider, the arrow there, and you can slide it up to the big mountain and it'll start zooming in. But if you slide it the other way, it'll zoom out. So I'm just going to slide it all the way to the right. And now I can see details on it a bit closer. So like now I kind of fill up the whole timeline and it's a little easier to work with and nothing too crazy. Now that we have that set up, what we need to do, what we're actually going to do, is we're going to start to draw over our frames that we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in my layers over here, I'm going to bring my blank video layer that I'm going to draw on top. I'm also going to make sure it's the same. Oop, is it not going to let me? No. Actually, I might need to make a new video layer here. It's not letting me stretch it. Give me 1 second. So I'm going to go to layer, new video, where is it? Video layers, new blank video layer. And now it's a bit longer. The frames are a bit friendlier. Let's see. It's going to get cut off. Let me actually trim this a little bit just so everything, it's a little janky right now in terms of what it's doing, just because the frame rate is set at 12. So once I have that set up, once I have my blank video layer at the top, something you might want to do also, just to make sure you don't draw on the actual video, is click in your layer panel on the right and click the little lockbox to lock it in, just to make sure I don't make any changes, it doesn't move, I don't accidentally click anything. And then you want to make sure your blank video layer is selected. So from there, I'm going to get my brush tool. Again, this is going to be probably a very rough animation. Actually, I'm going to make this I'm going to unlock my video layer. I'm going to bring the opacity down a little bit, just so I know where I'm drawing on my other layer, just to make my life a little bit easier. Going to lock it again. Going to click on my blank video layer. I'm going to change my color. Let's just do like a darkish blue, just kind of have fun. And I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller. Let's do like 10 pixels. I'm doing this on mouse, so if you have like a Wacom or a tablet, this might be a bit easier. So basically all I'm doing now, I'm going to be just tracing. So I'm just getting his outline. Since this is kind of a blurry video, like where he's moving real fast, I'm not going to draw the parts that are kind of like faded on him. Ooh. And again, I'm doing this very simple. You can spend your time like doing really detailed rotoscope animations. So there, I got his outline. I'm going to go to the next frame. And I have the onion skin on so I can see, but for this, I'm not going to actually need it. So I'm going to go back to the menu. I'm going to turn off the onion skins because I don't need to see those frames, just because I'm just referencing video. Ooh. I'm going to try to do this faster, you guys, so it's not super, takes a long time. Whoa, that's going to be a little bit off, but that's okay. You always can fine tune this stuff later. You're probably going to want to, because just because you're tracing or using a reference of something else doesn't mean you have to stick to that. You always can like kind of make your own variations. Similar to like, I think Lord of the Rings, they were just wore regular clothes and they kind of just turned it into fantasy elements. Whoa, I don't have a steady hand right now. Too much caffeine. Whoa. And if you notice, like it's a little easier for me now because I don't have like 60 frames per second. So it's not going to be, I'm not spending forever going down on this whole timeline. He's going to have his little baby blobby hands. Kind of like how weird this is getting. Whoa. So do that, then I get this. Let me draw this one. Let's give see a little preview of what it looks like after I get this one done. Boop. His little hair actually like makes it easier to draw because you can just do a big circle. If you had like a very sharp profile, then it'd probably be a lot harder. So let me just see what that looks like so far. I'm gonna turn like I'm gonna do the visibility off for my video layer. I'm gonna make it where's my last frame? Right there. It's gonna be really short, but if you notice, like, oh, it's kind of, it's getting there. It's a little choppy. Again, it'll be smoother if you have more frames. Um, um, but that's not what we're going for. So it's coming out okay. Sometimes also rotoscoping is good for not necessarily for like final animations, but maybe you're just like trying to learn how somebody moves, and like you want to be able to draw that freely rather than like have to rotoscope. Sometimes like using some reference video and practicing by rotoscoping those elements will help you kind of start to understand like in a more kinesthetic level on like how to draw those elements. So this might be a good way to practice. You can also, like I was saying, you can instead of just purely rotoscoping, you can have these drawings over the actual film and export it as a video. So like like I have a tendency to like get dog videos and then just add like blush on them and like drool kind of popping out of their face, just like little special effects. And like it's really easy to do with rotoscoping. You can give like turn your dog into a little kawaii animal that's like super cute. So that's kind of fun with rotoscoping. Again, also, like I would say, or I kind of messed up there. I would recommend watching those films that I talked about in the beginning, primarily like skimming through Waking Life just to see like how varied and different you can do your animations, like your style or aesthetic, while still being like having a very smooth and very much like lifelike movement because it was rotoscoped, even though the style is like something that looks like Picasso or very unnatural to like the real world. And plus, it's nice to see like the effects and stuff how they blend that with like traditional animation. Let me do this one and let's see how it looks. Whoa, it's gonna be a weird little blobby man. Again, if you have a tablet, it would probably be a lot easier to work with. Okay, let's see how that looks so far. Our little breakdancing dude. Oh, let me turn off that back frame. So that's looking pretty good. I'm actually surprised how nicely it looks, but yeah, even though like I was a little bit messy and everything on it, you can still see that human movement. Like it has all the weight that the video had. It's nothing like super crazy. It looks very consistent. And if you notice, ooh, sorry guys, messed up on that. And because I'm tracing, it's like not super hard at all. Let me just get these last couple frames in. So yeah, and this can be pretty relaxing too, since like you kind of, if you have your footage and you know what you're looking for, you can kind of just do this like without thinking because you're just literally tracing. This is kind of calming. You can put some like some like new wave or like Kenny G on, or put if you can't paint, maybe throw some like Bob Ross on. I tend to like to put when I need to have moments of like quietness, but also like feel good about life. Throw some like Mr. Rogers on. That's always something that makes me feel good. But yeah, I mean, this guy seems to feel pretty good about spinning. We just need to make sure we get all his frames so he can actually spin the way he wants to. I think we might be this frame and one more frame. Hope so. Come on. Oh, I'm getting there. All right. I think this is going to be the last stream. Let me cut these clips. It's not letting me, I think, because the frames per second is kind of funky. Let me cut. Oop. Let me cut this. It's okay. So I hope you guys are seeing just like how. Why is it not letting me? Okay. Oh, because I don't have a. I think that is. I need to make this a little bit bigger. So if you're trying to draw on a moment, what happened right there is that like on my timeline, I was trying to draw on a section that the layer I was working with was not actually in that moment on time. So like it couldn't draw because the video layer just didn't want to be there in that time. So I had to edit it a little bit. So let's see, I think this is all the frames. So if I hit play, yay, we have a breakdancing dude. I mean, I can keep animating. It'll take a while, but as you see, like he's got the motion. You can tell kind of what it is by looking at it. You know, it's like got human form in some way. You're kind of getting more of the action, and that's like the awesome thing about rotoscoping is that you get a lot of the weight that's actually recorded from and transferred into your animation with like very little bit of effort, just time put into it. So that's pretty cool. I mean, once we have our animation, so like I said, I could bring in, let's say, just a regular layer, you know, one of these purple layers. I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to cut it to be the same length as my other stuff. I'm going to put it in the background. So what I'm going to do also is since I got my animation, I can actually, is it going to move the whole thing? Let me see. Okay, good. So once I get my animation in there, I can move the layer and it'll move the whole animation. So what I can do here, I just move them down and they still have that animation. In my regular layer, I can just draw like some weird pavement, weird, and then you know, maybe let's like make it happy. I don't know if you guys can see that. Actually, it's a bad color. Let's go a little bit more brownish. Right. This is my wonderful palm tree. And then we're gonna get that green. I'm just doing this to show the background. You know, we go Miami or whatever. So then like if I hit play, because it's a regular layer that I drew on, it's just gonna stay static. So now I have my like fun little background that goes along with it. So I have my breakdancing beach dude. He'll be our mascot for today. So now that I have that, what I can do is I'm just gonna put another layer in here, just a regular background again. I'm gonna let me cut that. I'm just gonna put this in here just so I have like a color. I'm just gonna put white for the background. I'm gonna fill it in. So there, it's also a little bit easier to see. What I can do from there, I can actually, there's an option down here in the lower left of the timeline. I'm not going to get into that because my computer is actually not set up right now to do it. But with this button in the lower left, it has like a little curvy arrow. If you click that, it's to render the video, and you can render it out as like a QuickTime or like some video file, whatever it is that you want. So you can have that. But if you want to do like an animated GIF, you can go to File and then go to Export. And there's an option that says Save for Web. I'm going to click that. It says Legacy because it's kind of like they've moved on from this, but I find it's easier to make animated GIFs this way. I would click the Save for Web, and it's going to kind of show you a preview of what you made. You can hit a little play button down here in the right to see what it's going to look like. You want to make sure in this menu in the upper right that it is set to GIF or GIF. And down at the bottom here, it says image size right around this area. You can change the size if it's like too big. I can like set 512 right now by 512. I can do like instead I can bring it down to like 75%, so it's a little bit smaller now. It also tells you on the lower left here of like this big box here, it says the size of the file that it's going to spit out, like that it's going to create, how long it is, so 3 seconds, and then, or no, actually, no, I'm sorry. That's actually telling you how long the file will take to load on a website. So it'll take roughly about 3 seconds to load this animated GIF on a website. So that might be important for depending on what you're creating. You can then also, and this is really important, where it says animation here on the box lower right, there's looping options. Make sure you set that to forever. I think it defaults to forever, but if you do once, what'll happen is it'll load up on your website or whatever, play once, and then just freeze and like never play again. So just make sure you set it to forever, and then it'll be fine, and it'll just like keep looping. So then once you have that set, you can hit the save button, save it to whatever you want. I'm just going to save it to just real quick, not my desktop. Put it in my downloads. I'm going to call it Boy Dance. And the format, make sure it says image only or images only. If you do the other ones where it says like HTML and images, it's going to spit out code that you don't really need. Because since this option is mostly for web design, I would just do images only and then hit save. It'll spit out the file. Let me pull it up real quick. So I have my dance thing here, and I don't know if it's gonna play. Okay, so in Windows here, it's like playing totally fine. You can like zoom in, I think. Boop. It's gonna let me zoom in. So there, I made my own little animated GIF, rotoscoped, using Photoshop. So I hope that was helpful for you. I really recommend for you to check out the films that I posted. Look at those because it's going to kind of be inspiring to kind of see what has been done out there and what you can do with rotoscoping. I recommend you spend time in Photoshop doing this at least a couple times. And I think it's really fun, and I think it's a really good way to have a workflow to make your animations look really great while also still being having nice flow to it and look natural. This works on people, dogs, cars, whatever, like anything in the real world that you can film, you can rotoscope. So take that into account. So it's been pretty awesome doing this. I enjoy doing these streams. I'm going to be doing another one next week. Next week, likely, it's not going to be a workshop. I'm going to be showcasing the application I'm developing for South Florida artists to use augmented reality on their phone. I'm going to kind of have like a progress report on how that's going. So you guys actually will be able to see on the stream me using the application in its current form and like what it's going to offer, and how you can start like collecting local artists in South Florida and getting like digital versions of their artwork, all for free because this is under the not-for-profit. So until then, though, great seeing you. I look forward to seeing you next week at 8 o'clock, same time, just next Thursday. And I hope you guys stay safe, stay home, and have an awesome month.